Welcome to today's decision-making exercise brought to you by the California Association of Tactical Officers and the Debrief. My name is Toby Darby, and I'm a board member and instructor for Cato. Now, today's exercise is designed to challenge your ability to analyze complex situations, make critical decisions, and discuss them together with your peers. But before we dive into the scenarios, let's talk about what a decision-making exercise is and why it is so effective for law enforcement. A decision-making exercise, or as we call it at Cato, a DME, gives you the chance to step into a realistic scenario, consider how you would handle the situation, and then discuss different points of view and approaches. What makes it so powerful is that it allows you to test your thinking in a safe, controlled environment before the real-world stakes are at play. It's a learning experience where you can see how your decisions might unfold in an actual incident, challenge each other's thinking, and come to an agreement on the resolution your team would take following your local law and policy guidelines. Before beginning today's exercise, please select one person to act as the facilitator for the exercise. As the facilitator, your role is critical in guiding group discussions, ensuring thoughtful analysis, and maintaining alignment with established law, ethics, policies, and national standards. Your responsibilities include pausing the video at key moments, encouraging participation, and challenging answers where appropriate. After each section or scenario prompt, you will pause the video to allow the group time to discuss and respond to the specific questions presented. Ensure that all participants have a clear understanding of the scenario before beginning the discussion. Encourage each group to answer the specific questions thoroughly. Ensure that every participant has an opportunity to contribute to the discussion. And if needed, prompt quieter members to share their thoughts to foster a diverse perspective. Listen carefully to the group's responses and challenge answers that may cause disagreement or do not align with legal, ethical, or policy standards. Use your knowledge of law enforcement policies, best practices, and national standards to steer the group back if their answers conflict with what is being trained or applied across the country. When disagreements arise, encourage the group to explore the reasons behind each stance. Push the group to justify their decisions, asking them to consider potential consequences, risk, and the balance between tactical action and safety. If any supporting documents, reference materials, or handouts are provided, distribute them at the appropriate times. Ensure participants review and incorporate this information into their decision-making process. Remind the group that the exercise is designed to stimulate real-world decision-making. The objective is not just to get the answer right, but to understand the thought process behind each decision. In the words of Simon Sinek, understand the why. In today's session, you'll be divided into small groups of 3 to 4 people per table. We will present you with several questions pertaining to today's incident. After each question is asked, I want you to pause the video, break into your groups, and discuss the problem. Talk through your solutions, frame how you see the issue, and consider what the dilemmas are that make it a challenge. Use this opportunity to share perspectives and think critically about the factors at play. Each breakout session will be about 5 to 10 minutes. Each small group should determine their answers to the questions asked. Before today's scenario, I will briefly cover a principle or concept related to tactical science, critical decision-making, or other considerations that will help you approach the problem. That said, make sure to include these concepts in your solutions and discussions. By the end, you will not only have an understanding of your own decision-making process, but also how to incorporate these concepts into real-life incidents. Finally, make sure that each time you return from your breakout sessions, you use a different person to brief back what your table discussed. If you are more tenured at your table, I would encourage you to let those at your table who have less experience talk first. You will see that not everyone sees the problem the same way and may have a different way on how they handle the problem. This happens because people in your class or your group have different levels of training, education, experience, and cognitive biases. That's what's great about these exercises. Exposing different points of view and applying different tactics to these situations. At the end of today's exercise, you'll be able to see how your decision-making played out during an actual incident. Now let's get started. Today, we'll be challenging you with a hostage situation, but first, we will discuss principles related to tactical science. Today's discussion will entail the 5 characteristics of a crisis and the importance of framing an incident correctly. You know, one of the most important things we must do at the onset of any critical incident is to frame the problem correctly. How we frame the situation will directly impact the type of strategy and tactics we use, and these decisions are often based on established heuristics, mental shortcuts, or rules of thumb drawn from past experience or knowledge. In every crisis situation, whether it's an active shooter or a hostage incident, there are always 5 key characteristics that will almost always be present. Sid Hill identifies these in his books, Field Command and Sound Doctrine, and they help us understand the complexity of a crisis so we can respond appropriately. First, there's uncertainty. In the early moments of an active shooter or hostage situation, information is often incomplete or conflicting. You might not know how many suspects are involved, the condition of the hostages, or the full extent of the threat. Second, we face time constraints. In an active shooter situation, every second matters. The speed of your response can mean the difference between life and death. Similarly, in a hostage situation, time affects whether you negotiate or take immediate action. Next is human factors. The actions and emotions of everyone involved, including officers, suspects, and hostages, play a critical role in how the situation unfolds. Fatigue, fear, stress, and even the suspect's psychological state must be factored into your decisions. Then there's risk. Every decision involves a calculation of risk. Risk to the victims, the officers, and even the public. Whether it's entering into a building that's under fire or waiting too long to act, each choice carries a potential danger. Finally, we must consider the potential for severe consequences. In both an active shooter situation and a hostage situation, the consequences of failure are severe, including loss of life, public safety crisis, and lasting community impacts. Every action or inaction in these moments has the potential to alter lives permanently. Throughout this exercise, we'll discuss how these 5 characteristics shape the decisions we make in the field and how understanding them can lead to better, faster, and more effective responses. We encourage you at this point to grab a pen and piece of paper as we are getting ready to provide you with the first dilemma and set of questions. We will display the questions on the screen so you and your groups can refer to them as you work through the problem. Now let's begin. You were the first supervisor on scene. You've been dispatched to a call where a female reports that she has been stabbed by her brother. She has escaped the residence and contacted you and other officers down the street. She informs you that her brother is still inside the house along with her other brother and their mother. She is unsure on the current status of her mother and brother, but knows that they both have been stabbed. Now get a pen and paper ready to write down these questions. They will be posted in the video immediately after I read these, so the moderator can pause the video when the screen is displayed. So here we go. As the first supervisor on scene, what are your immediate actions in response to the situation? What are you framing this problem as? Is there an exigency that justifies immediate intervention, such as forcing entry into the residence? If so, what indicators would lead you to believe this, and how will you make that determination? If you determine there is no immediate exigency, what other tactical options will you consider while prioritizing the safety of all involved? Now is the time to break up into your groups and discuss these questions. Pause the video and we will see you back in a little bit. Welcome back. So in this scenario, your groups probably discussed concerns such as the safety of the occupants inside the residence, fighting through the uncertainty, which is one of the 5 characteristics of a crisis, by trying to obtain more information to allow you to make a decision. You're probably wondering what the suspect is doing after engaging the officers, such as reloading, maneuvering inside the residence, or fortifying his location. Do those things make you think about other entry-exit points? The status of the victims? Or maybe the fact that other victims made it out without the original reporting female knowing? Remember that in situations like this, it is always good to ensure that we are implementing the 3 components of the CLR method, as some would call it, the CLEAR method: containment, long rifle, or in some cases in patrol, urban patrol rifle, and react team, or as others would call it, crisis entry team or rescue team. These things at least get you doing something in order to put things in your favor. Start making decisions early on and get the appropriate resources, such as SWAT, rolling to the scene. Now we're going to our second dilemma. You are now transitioning into a tactical role. After the initial encounter, the patrol sergeant and officers approached the residence to make contact with the suspect. Upon announcing their presence at the front door, they kicked in the door and the suspect opened fire on them. Patrol officers retreated safely with no injuries reported, stating that the suspect is armed with the AR-15 style rifle and is wearing a plate carrier with body armor. That is when they called for SWAT. The reporting party, the female who was initially stabbed, has been transported to the hospital and is no longer at the scene. You arrive and are being briefed by a patrol sergeant. Okay, so grab a pen and paper now and get ready to write these questions down again. Like last time, they will be posted on the screen so you can pause the video after I read the questions. Here we go with the questions. The first question is, as a tactical team lead, what are you now framing this incident as? Is it a hostage rescue, hostage recovery, or a barricaded suspect? What key questions will you ask the patrol sergeant to gather critical information about the situation and the suspect's actions so far? What will your plan be for gathering intelligence, such as using technology, drones, or negotiators, to avoid unnecessary escalation and ensure the safety of any potential hostages and officers on the scene? Go ahead and break into your groups now. The questions will be on the screen, and you can pause the video now. So welcome back. So we have a lot to unpack here in a short amount of time, so here we go. As you see, if you happen to be a patrol supervisor or even a patrol officer on scene, what you do or don't do at the onset of an incident can make a huge difference in the outcome of the event, especially when the incident is handed over to a tactical team. We see this a lot with active shooter incidents where the initial response where officers do something could end the incident quickly or prolong the incident in the event that nothing is done. So what did your group frame this as? Did any of your groups ask the patrol sergeant how long ago the suspect was last seen? Does time play into your decision making? And as a tactical team, did your groups discuss what type of additional information or intelligence you would like, such as having an officer respond to the hospital to debrief the initial victim? A lot of great talking points on this one. So let's now move on to the last dilemma. It has now been 45 minutes to an hour since the suspect was last seen, and there has been no proof of life from either the victims or the suspect. Your team is now on scene and are in a position to conduct a crisis entry. At this point, you are faced with a critical decision. Knowing that the suspect is armed with a rifle, with body armor, knows his terrain, and the victim or the suspect has not been heard from for 45 minutes to an hour, here are your questions. What are the top 5 factors that would determine whether you should launch a crisis entry? Are you going to launch a crisis entry based on these top 5 factors? If you decide not to launch a crisis entry, how long would have to pass before you would decide to make entry? What factors influence your decision here? Are you prioritizing a potential urgency of a medical rescue for the victims, or are you considering the suspect might still pose an active threat? What are the risks involved in both waiting and initiating a rescue at this point? So take some time to reflect on these questions, weigh the risk, and discuss your approach with your group. Like the previous dilemmas, the questions will be posted on the screen, so pause the video appropriately. Welcome back. There are a lot of things to consider when deciding whether to initiate a crisis entry. You may have come up with some others, but the 5 factors that we came up with consist of the amount of time that passed without proof of life, the level of threat posed by the armed suspect, the medical urgency for potential victims, the suspect's past actions, such as shooting at the officers, and the tactical team's readiness to respond. Not to mention things such as potential surveillance cameras, evacuations of neighboring properties, the suspect's motivation, as well as unrestricted behavior and constraints and restraints that law enforcement has to deal with. If you choose not to make an immediate entry, you need to determine how much more time can pass before delay becomes too risky. Your decision should balance the urgency of a medical rescue for the victims against the possibility that the suspect still poses an active threat. Both waiting and initiating entry carry significant risks. Waiting may reduce confrontation, but can result in further harm to the victims, while initiating entry may escalate the situation, putting both officers and hostages at greater risk. Yes, this incident actually happened in Austin, Texas on November 11, 2023, where senior police officer George Pastor sacrificed his life while attempting to save two people who he didn't know. One other officer, John Connor, was also shot and seriously injured during this crisis entry. We at Cato and the Debrief ask you to keep the officers and their families in your hearts and prayers. These types of incidents carry with them all 5 characteristics of a crisis: uncertainty, issues relating to time, human factors, potential for severe consequences, and obviously risk. Incidents like these are an asymmetric risk environment. There is not always a right answer to these problems, and even if your team does everything correct, things can still go wrong. We are grateful for the Austin Police Department sharing this incident so that we can all become better law enforcement professionals. At this point, we ask you to play the debrief of this incident with your group. Thank you for joining us, and remember, at Cato, we believe that tactics are a science and the art is how you apply those tactics. Stay safe.